All right, let's start our conversation this morning on AM Live on People and Politics. The hashtag is AM Live. You can tweet at Trevor Ombija at AM Live. We'll read some of your views as they come through. I haven't given you a topic because we have so much to talk about. There's the People's Assembly, there's the interim government proposal, there's the presidential petition proposal, there's the secession talks. In fact, that's what we want to start talking about. And I want to introduce my guest to you, beginning from my immediate left, Dr. Honorable Tiende Amolo, Ombudsman Emeritus and Member of Parliament for Arieda, Dr. Miguna, an advocate, and we also have Honorable Mithika Linturi, Meru Senator, and Honorable Kimani Wamatangi, Kiambu Senator. Thanks for making time for us as usual. Let's start with the secession politics, and I'll start with you, Dr. Tiende. How do you intend to execute this? Because we've talked about this before, but it keeps coming up over and over again. How do you intend to execute this?
Thank you, Trevor. I think the first thing that should detain our minds is the question of why the secession talk. And in the order of things, it is important to agree and understand first that although there's the motion by the MP for Homa Bay, a motion with which I have great sympathy, it has not been adopted as the official position of NASA. That said, too, the fact that we are talking secession, the fact that we are discussing whether to divide this country should be a point of worry to those who support the unfair and irrational position in which we find ourselves. Yeah. 55 years after independence, if we can have a situation where only a section of the society feels advantaged to the extent that the greater section of the society does feel a sense of non-belonging, then one would understand why there can be this push for secession. Yeah. I still hold the view that although the secession talk is now, there still remains a small window of opportunity to remedy things to the extent that the secession debate may not need to be taken forward. And that window must still lie in the possibility, despite all odds, of having credible elections that everybody can accept.
So basically this is just to pass a message, but it's not that you might push forward with the secession.
I think, Trevor, those are two different points. I am saying that is my view. And as I've told you, I hold the view that there's a window of opportunity of remedying things. Now, I've also indicated to you that the motion by the Homa Bay MP is understandable, but has not been adopted as the NASA position yet. Okay. I believe that if things can be remedied to the point that people can have that sense of belonging, to the point that we cannot have an exclusive claim to power by only two communities, to the extent that we can feel Kenyan enough, then that discussion of secession, whether it's from the west of this country, from the coast of this country, or from the north of this country, might not be.
Okay. Dr. Miguna, is it a practical approach in your governance experience?
I think the question is diversionary. It's distracting from the real issues. I'm a Pan-Africanist, I'm a nationalist, I'm not a secessionist. And I don't think at this time it is a useful debate. It is a debate that has been brought by people who don't want us to discuss real issues. The real issue right now is electoral fraud that happened on August 8th and was repeated on October 26th. The issue right now is a rise to despotism. People who have lost an election and have refused to cede power instead have started a process of institutionalizing dictatorship by threatening the judiciary, by subverting the constitution, by controlling the electoral commission. These are the issues. The next issue would be equity in Kenya. Since independence, we know that tribalism and nepotism have been institutionalized, that corruption is now a huge department in the government of Kenya. In fact, probably the controlling one. And that if you're not corrupt, you don't have any chance either being employed or maintaining a position with the government of the Republic of Kenya. Okay. These are the issues. The issue right now is the current ongoing petition at the Supreme Court. If we can discuss those issues, I would be very comfortable. But when you bring in an issue about a member of parliament, one person, petitioning the IBC for secession. It's not been brought by a political party. It's not been brought by the organized group. As an NRM general, I consider that irrelevant.
But you do know as an advocate also that we can't talk about the petition that's already in court.
You can. You know this idea, Trevor, this is the problem with this country. The media is totally ignorant of the law, yet the media should know the law. The media has inside counsel, many lawyers, very competent ones, and they would tell you the only thing you're not supposed to discuss is the outcome of the petition in terms of arguments for and against, and predicting what the outcome is going to be, or trying to inform the court as to how to arrive at the outcome. But in fact, you can discuss the petitions. You can, in detail. You can even discuss what so-and-so said, what this guy said, what the evidence is, what we saw during the process. There is nothing sub judice there. And regardless, the sub judice censure is gone out of fashion all over the world. The only place you still find it are countries, banana republics like Kenya, where people want to hold illegitimate power. Really, it is just to muzzle people from discussing real issues. Okay. If you go to the US, if you go to Europe, if you go to any functional democracy, the fact that somebody has filed a case in court, in fact, opens it up for discussion because it becomes a public debate. Okay. But here in Kenya, they don't want you to talk about public issues. For me, I will talk about it. I will talk about the petition. There is nothing wrong about it. And there is no order that will come from the court that Miguna cannot discuss the petition. Okay. So let's not dance around these issues. Let's discuss these issues robustly. There is a petition. The petitions are against electoral fraud. The petitions, at least one of them will be granted. I can say that. I have seen the petitions. I've seen the evidence. I saw the evidence when people were voting. It is clear there was no election. The exercise was a coronation for Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. Okay. These are the things we must discuss.
Okay. Honorable Mithika.
I will not discuss the issues that Muguna is alluding to as far as the matter of petitions in the courts are concerned, because I believe that if we completely make it public, as he's saying, then we will be arguing or making arguments in a manner that is likely to influence the judges in the way they make a determination of that case. And when you want to really discuss the issue of sub judice, it's a very thin line. People may not know not just the normal people, who will not know what is sub judice and to what extent that they cannot go beyond certain of those public debates. And for that matter, we can better leave this matter to the judges because it's quite emotive. I would agree with the Miguna partly that as long as your debate is coached in a way that you do not automatically come out to say this shouldn't be the outcome in your discussions, then you may not be getting to that level where you may be saying to be to be determining the case before court or influencing the outcome. But you cannot be in a position to really gag people to what extent they can take that debate to. So we can better really leave the course to decide. And Miguna, I think it's also fair for you to appreciate that Kenya is not a banana republic. Kenya has a constitution, Kenya has laws. Those laws that you feel are not effective, are not good for the proper administration of our republic, the best way to do is to come up, go talk to your parliament, to your member of parliament, go talk to any other friend of yours that is in the National Assembly, make proposals to have those laws amended through the right procedure and not try to imagine permanently that there is nothing that can come out of Kenya. When elections have been done and we continually talk about electoral fraud And especially for those people that decided not really to participate, I think we are not being fair to this country. And as long as, Trevor, you continue entertaining this kind of debate, every time is electoral fraud, every time is theft, every time despotism, you know we are trying to create a narrative. And you know a lie repeated so many times is like it's the truth. And you know Miguna is a master, right? Is a master of a liar. Is a person that can really put issues in the context in which they are not. So for purposes of making Kenya, getting people to know what is really happening in the country is necessary, yes, to discuss things that are live. Things that happen.
Did you just call me a liar?
I think you have the power.
I'm a master of what?
You have a master of trying to bring perceptions that you appear to be true, because you are creating impressions that Kenya is a banana republic. That you know is a lie. And to that extent, if you want to believe I have sent a liar, I don't think I'll be far much away from the truth, because Kenya is not a banana republic. Let us understand that we have a responsibility of being patriotic as Kenyans. I at times sit down and ask myself, if we were fighting for independence, if we went back to those early 1960s, before Kenya became independent, how many of us would be willing to give their source for the sake of this country, for us to get the Mzungu out? So that is behind us, but I sincerely want to plead that since we want to have our country intact, and remembering what the people of Kenya said in the preamble of our constitution, that proud of being the Kenyans being proud of their ethnic, their cultural, their religious diversity, and determined to live in peace as a peace and in unity as a one country. We cannot really engage in situations where we want to divide the country. However much differences that we may have, I think we have an opportunity to sit down as Kenyans and see what really defines us, and see how we can bridge that gap. It is true, what brings us every 5 years and what drains or what destroys our bond that is normally created out of working together, out of growing an economy together, out of building a nation together for 5 years, is how power is shared after the elections. And let us agree, power is shared according to what the Constitution provides. So if we are not agreeable to the system, and since we have tried this Constitution for the last 10 years, I personally opposed it. And some of the things we are saying that time, that if one runs an election and becomes number 2 in Kenya with almost half the country, it will not be fair to have him outside. And if we feel now this thing, we need to sit down again and relook at it, then let's sit down together as brothers and sisters in this country and say this constitution does not serve us right, is dividing Kenya more, is destroying the country. So let's reason together and come with amendments that we feel will address the best interest of every Kenyan, so that at least every Kenyan feels included.
Senator Matangi, is it time for constitutional reforms?
Oh, first, let me in my normal tradition say good morning to Kenyans this morning, because I like starting it on that note. By the way, Trevor, I think long way before you were born, and maybe even before NTV became a reality, there was a very popular show on the only one TV channel then that existed, KBC, that was called Good Morning Kenya. I don't know whether it still exists. So anyway, coming to what you asked first, as I come to the second question, whether it's time for reforms. I think it is important for us to call it for what it is. There's debate about about secession, including that motion or bill filed in Parliament by Honorable Kaluma. I think it's reckless. I think it's only populist, and it's also selfish. Because if you look at what it intends to serve, and I also note that slightly my friend Otiende Amolo touched on it by saying, that at this time it could be inspired by that feeling that still a section of Kenyans still that they don't belong. They still feel they don't belong. If that would be what one would be looking at or thinking, then to come up with that kind of thought, then you would just simply have to conclude that it's a very selfish thought. Reasons being, selfish in what way? In this sense, because if you feel that you've been excluded, what you're saying is that you're still playing to the old thoughts that we have been trying to dissuade Kenyans from following. That if somebody is elected president from a certain community in this country, then that amounts to an advantage to the entire community at large, or people at large, without discrimination. And as long as we allow that mentality to pervade, to continue to dominate and be presumed to be the truth, then we still get it wrong. I would tell my colleague Otiende Amolo, if you look at the history, for example, of the Luo community, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga was vice president of this republic. His son, Raila Amolo Odinga, was prime minister in this country. But if you went to, for example, then the community that he comes from, Luo Nyanza, and carried out a survey and asked the people there, how directly have you ever been affected by these two gentlemen, having been holders of those very high positions in the country? You will find that probably 98.999% of them have even never felt it, other than hear it. There's no direct relationship other than just saying that our man is there. And because we have said that this is something that we want to remove from Kenya's mentality, so that competition for high positions can just be based on merit, and you are able as an individual, as a community, to pursue your existence and your rights and your well-being on other platforms, not on the basis of that Wamatangi is there, so we, the people of Central, are going to benefit.
So are you then saying exclusion is just a perception issue? It's not real?
That's precisely what I'm saying, because Trevor, if you are to look at it on a fair scale, on what basis would you be making that argument? You would just simply be saying, because if you look at any other position, cabinet ministers, cabinet secretaries, permanent secretaries, or any other positions one would be talking about in leadership, there is none that has not been held by every community in this country as of now. The only one argument you hear circulating around is that, the chief executive of the country, the president of the country was this one, and that then seems to, unfortunately, whitewash every other gain, every other position, every other achievements that individuals in those communities have made, or even those communities have made. And that's what I'm saying. That if somebody pursued a legal journey to bring a bill to Parliament based on that mentality, he would be very wrong, because I would want to persuade my colleagues here to completely drop that argument and know that if you go to the village where Jaramogi hailed from when he was vice president, you will still find poor people who cannot even put food on their table. Okay. If you went to the neighborhood of Raila Amolo Odinga today, you would still find people, even when he was prime minister for those 5 years, who cannot put food on their table. And so the positions they hold are irrelevant, including even, when Kibaki was president, when Uhuru is president. I mean, those people hold those positions for purposes of leading the country and not feeding their communities. Okay. So this sense of exclusionism, let's remove it. Now, on this question that you asked, is it time for us to relook at constitutional reform. And you know, I'm very perturbed by one fact. You know, of late, the Right Honorable former Prime Minister has taken on a new definition or term or referring to the Republic of Kenya. I've heard him in a few speeches. Now, he no longer calls Kenya our nation or Kenya our country. He calls it Project Kenya, and continues to say in many forums that in his mind Project Kenya has failed, and that is disturbing. That is disturbing. It asks you, it makes you beg of that question. Even as you're talking about this secession talk, even as you're talking about constitutional reforms, are you negotiating, are you talking with people who have backtracked, in fact, on their original mission, that they are nationalists, that they are patriots? Because once you contextualize that indeed there was no nation in the first place, that it was never firm, and it was not a milestone passed, that it was not ours, it was a project we were trying, that is erroneous. And that's what I'm saying. If constitutional reform, Trevor, would be pursued following the avenues that NASA now are proposing, and it is, we must say this, it is, I think it is, you know, it is a reneging on even their own oath of office. Reason, let me finalize on this point. See, if you hear what they're saying now, they're saying that they have sponsored the starting of those assemblies, people's assemblies. And
we'll talk about that
using their own representatives who are elected in the national system that is there for elections. They're saying that those assemblies will be comprising of MCAs, of MPs, of governors, deputy governors, and so on. And those are people who have already been elected by the recognized constitutional democratic process that we have of elections. And so you want to ask yourself, and that's the relationship I'm trying to mirror. I said that as you ask the next question. If you have people who are saying to their electorate, yes, you have gone ahead and elected your own people as per the constitution to be your own representatives, and you're saying that now go back on that word and on that process, and these people now belong to another illegal assembly that they will pursue to bring about those so-called constitutional reforms what is being advanced, or which is being advanced by people who no longer believe in the country, and they call the country a project.
Okay. Dr. Tiende, I want you to come in on this, and there's a lot that has been raised. Are you just fostering this perception of exclusion?
Let me make 3 points. But let me start with the point that I think we owe Kenyans. This whole idea of sub judice. Sub judice is a common law principle, which means it's one of those principles that we adopted from the English when we adopted their laws, that prevents you from commenting on a matter that is ongoing in court or in parliament in such a way that it might prejudice the continuation, if it's in court, the hearing of that case. The concept of sub judice has now been reduced tremendously, and in our case, it has been reduced by the constitution we adopted in 2010. Article 33 gives every Kenyan the freedom of expression, and it puts the limit of what you can speak to. And the limit of that freedom is if you are propagating hatred or it's propaganda for war or such like. So sub judice is not one of those that are excluded. In your case as a media house, you are then again insulated by Article 34, which gives the freedom of the media. In other words, you are free to talk about any matter, even when it has been taken to court. The limit of what you must observe is a new act that was passed last year, which is called the Contempt of Court Act. The Contempt of Court Act at Section 4 then defines contempt of court, that you will be in contempt of court if you say or do things that will either scandalize the court, or that will prejudice the hearing of the matter, or which will interfere with the hearing. Now, as long as none of those three are applicable, you can talk about any matter.
But Dr. Tiende, that's a very thin line.
Yes, let me explain. Yeah. It is not thin. Right now, you can talk about anything that is in the Supreme Court. You can talk about what every party has presented to the Supreme Court. You can talk about what the court will likely say or do or hear. What you are not allowed to say is to start attacking the persons of each of those judges in a way that will make them not be able to hear the case. What you cannot do is to insist that the only decision the court must make is this way. But if you explain why you think the court should make that decision, there's nothing wrong with that. In other words, what am I saying, Trevor? Really, sub judice does not stop you from discussing a matter live in court, even in the Supreme Court right now. But let me come secondly to the question that Senator Matangi speaks to, what he calls the selfish motion. It is quite interesting. Senator Matangi and his team aspire to high aspirations, aspirations of merit, aspirations of ethnic neutrality, aspirations of equity, but they do not practice them. But the interesting thing is that if those who then are excluded raise it, then they now call it selfish. I dare you, and one day I want us to just come here and discuss the question of distribution of jobs, of distribution of goods and you know, government goodies in this country. I dare you to call up the report by the NCIC in terms of ethnic distribution of parastatal jobs, of ambassadorial jobs, of cabinet jobs in this country. I dare you to call up the Public Service Commission report. And if you call those up, then what Senator Wamatangi is calling the myth will become the reality. The reality is this. The Constitution is very clear, our laws are very clear, that everything is supposed to be based on merit. There is supposed to be some sense of ethnic neutrality. We thought when we wrote the Constitution in 2010 that now that the Constitution for the first time expressly insists that that will change, that has not changed. And when Senator Matangi gives the examples of some Luo somewhere, the late Jaramogi was vice president, Raila Odinga was prime minister, no Luo has ever been president. And therefore those examples are irrelevant. You will give those examples the day you are able to say this Luo or this Kisi or this Turkana was president on this day and did not happen. The reality of what has happened is best captured by President Kenyatta's own utterances of sisi tunakula nyama na wao wanaangalia. That is the reality in which we live in. The reality we live in is that unless your own person is occupying that state house, and which is why we're in a situation where elections will be sabotaged to no end, provided the end result is that President Kenyatta is president, then everything else follows. That's the unfortunate reality in which we are. We aspire for a country where that is not the reality. We do not have insufficiency of law. The Constitution is so clear. Our legislation is so clear. The practice is so wrong, which is why we would want a situation where we try something else. What he was referring us to Project Kenya. Is it possible that if somebody else could get to the helm, we could get the reality where it does not matter? I really hope that day will come. And that is what we are aspiring for by insisting on proper, legitimate elections. Let me then come to the question, is it time to amend the Constitution? Yeah. Let me start by saying that 90% of the problems we have are not based on insufficiency of the Constitution. It is actually based on sabotage of the Constitution. Even the things Senator Linturi talks about, most of them are covered positively in the Constitution. Our problem, one, is that we have a Constitution that is express, that decentralizes power, that creates independent organs, it creates parliament, it creates commission, but we have an executive that is determined to undermine that by making parliament, and that is what Jubilee has done, a subject of the dictates of the executive, by making independent bodies subject to the dictates of the executive. The one problem we have, and it is not new, it is something we identified when we were working on the Constitution, is the system of government. Yeah. For us who are the committee of experts, we were clear in our minds that given the nature of the Kenyan society, we were going to be best served by a parliamentary system. And when we developed the harmonized draft, and Senator Linturi, I don't know whether you're in parliament then. Yes, you are in parliament. We presented parliament with a draft that had a parliamentary system. But what happened is that when they went to Naivasha, there were two forces. And there are always two forces in this country. One, there are those who have gained from this centralization of power. And it describes even those who are in power right now. And therefore, the idea that you had a constitution that was going to decentralize power, was going to create devolved units, was something they were opposed to. They wanted centralized power, an imperial presidency. On the other hand, there are those who have been disadvantaged over the years, especially those from like the northern Kenya, eastern Kenya, the Nyanza and western, the coastal, who therefore wanted a fully fledged federal system. They wanted not just a devolution, but actually they wanted a federal system so that you had all these units that had all the powers. Yeah. So what happened is that in Naivasha, they had to negotiate. Those who wanted centralized power said, okay, we will allow devolution, but provided you abandon the idea of a parliamentary system and stick to a presidential system. And try as much as possible to retain the presidential powers, even if you accept that you remove some of them. Okay. That is how we've ended up where we are. If there's one thing that will need to be relooked at, it is the system of government. Okay. I still think, as we did then, that what would best serve this country is a parliamentary system. But let us not use that as an excuse for bringing that debate right now. Okay. The crisis we are in right now is not even because of the system of government. The crisis is because of electoral injustice, a situation where, because of executive manipulation, we cannot conduct free, fair, and credible elections, and that is what we're insisting on.
Well, thank you for staying with NTV's AM Live. This is People and Politics. My guests are still with me, Honorable Tiende Amolo, Member of Parliament, Rarieda, Dr. Miguna, Advocate, Kimani Wamatangi, Kiambu Senator, Mithika Linturi, and Meru Senator as well. We're talking about all the raft of issues that is bedeviling the country, from the People's Assembly to the interim government to the presidential petition. We've talked about secession. Now we're talking about the possibility of constitutional reforms and whether it's time. I can see a lot of your feedback coming through. We'll read some of them during this broadcast. Dr. Miguna, we're coming to you. We were talking about constitutional reforms. Do you reckon it's time? Yeah,
Trevor, thank you very much. First of all, let me respond. I think it is fair. It's only fair that I'm allowed to respond to what Senator Lunturi said specifically about me. He implied that by saying Kenya is a banana republic, I'm lying. What is a banana republic? In a country where individuals are richer than the Republic of Kenya, that's what a banana republic is, number one. There are individuals in this country, the Moi family, the Kenyatta family, the Biwott family, all of them combined are richer than the Republic of Kenya. In a country where success is not based on effort, is not based on what you put in, is not based on competence, is not based on integrity, is not based on production, that's a banana republic. Because what are they based on? What is success based on? In a country where leadership positions are not assumed or acquired or retained based on vision, based on a person's ideological clarity, based on a person's manifesto, that's what a banana republic is. In a country that borrows billions, hundreds of billions of Kenya shillings, and does not account for how it has used the amount of money, yet again goes to borrow another, trunket of billions. A country that threatens to increase taxes when 75% of the population is unemployed. That's a banana republic. In a country that involves, or leaders involved in electoral fraud with no consequences. A country where the chief executive threatens the judiciary, calls them wakora. That's a banana republic because it's not based on the rule of law. That's what I define as a banana republic. And these are facts. I'm not making them up. These are things that are happening right now. A country with no institutional independence. If you told a kid of 6 years of age that Chebukati is independent and that IEBC conducted a credible election, that child will tell you you should go and get yourself examined by a psychiatrist a psychiatrist, because we know that is not true. So that is what a banana republic is. I never said that any laws needed amending, and I never sought to amend any. So Senator Linturi is wrong. But I'm not saying no law requires amendment. I'm just saying as of now, our focus is on not amending the law or amending the Constitution. Our focus is enforcing the Constitution, making sure that it is not subverted the way it is being subverted right now by those who swore to uphold them.
Okay.
Now, coming to Senator Wamatangi, the issue of exclusion. You know, there is information circulating out there, and I've actually received an excerpt of a book that is being taught in Kiambu County to Standard 4 kids, social studies. And you know what they describe Luas and other Nilots? Farmhands working in Thika, Kiambu, Murang'a, and other central province areas in coffee farms and tea plantations. That's supposed to be teaching children about other ethnic groups. And do you know how they describe Kikuyus? Those who are in leadership and are running businesses. Now, if this is in the curriculum of a county that Senator Wamatangi actually represents, and this is being taught to children there, and this was just unveiled by the Kiambu County government. I have the book right here, page 36. Okay. This is a book that is being taught in Kiambu. And then somebody comes here and says that exclusion is a myth. Yeah. This is a country, and we must speak about this. It is true in this country that people say a Luo can never be president. People say that. And you find members of parliament speaking like this. You find people thinking that to be president, you have to belong to a certain ethnic group, you have to speak a particular language, you must have a certain amount of wealth. In a country where we have a sitting deputy president building a home, 3 homes, in the Rift Valley, worth more than 3 billion Kenya shillings, the size of 1,200 acres, and nobody explains how this money was acquired, and this man, we know his salary, and nobody wants us to ask these questions. This is what exclusion is. Yet, in the same country, other people have won elections, and they have not been declared leaders, not on the basis of what happened at the ballot box, but on the basis that members of that community do not control the military, do not control the police, are not the leaders in NSIS, and are not the chief bureaucrats in ministries. And these people that lead these institutions did not get into those positions because they are the most qualified, they are the most competent, they have the highest amount of integrity, or they are better than anybody else. Okay. These are not issues that we are going to stop discussing. Okay. Until we discuss these issues and resolve them. Until me, for example, I'll give you an example, Trevor. There are Jubilee people who shout all the time. Miguna comes to this show because Miguna is unemployed, right? So ask yourself the question. Miguna is a barrister and solicitor in Canada. A qualification a lot of these people would die to get. So if he's unemployed, for sure, if he is, why? Ask yourself the question. That is what should be troubling people. Does he sound like he's not qualified to do anything? So if it is true that he's unemployed, why? 2, advocates that practice law in Kenya, are they unemployed because they are privately practicing law? Do they need to be employed by the government to be considered employed? No. So why is it that in Kenya today, it is so easy, and the media does this, by the way, because I've looked at the blogs. Why is it that certain sections of the population of Kenya are not supposed to get certain jobs or be in certain positions because of who they are, because of where they come from? But if they were Kikuyu, for example, if you go to the Ministry of Interior, if you go to the Ministry of Finance, if you went to Devolution Ministry, 80% plus of those employees, of those officers, come from one community. Then you want us to come here and say that exclusion is a myth. It is a myth constructed by people like us to make Kenya look bad. And that in a country that is run that way, it's not a banana republic. If it is not a banana republic, what is a banana republic?
Okay. Imani Wamatangi, I'll let you respond about this book especially. We've seen it on social media, but our people cannot verify it. We cannot independently verify it. Have you heard of the book? Because it's alleged to be in your country.
Well, I was going to take the liberty of not responding to Miguna, because, you know, he has this habit of just saying things which which he selectively chooses to fit what narrative he wants to portray.
Have you heard of the book?
But the book, I've heard about it, but what he's saying is completely not only false.
Does it exist?
It's a pervasive lie. I mean, it's nowhere. I mean, I don't think you need to make a point by telling such banal lies. You can base your argument on a better platform. There's nowhere, and I think Miguna, for all his claims about his scholarly achievements,
the book exist
is completely ignorant of the history, not only of this country, but of the people of the community called the Kikuyu. Even when he tries to describe laborers and who, he doesn't know who have labored. I want to invite him, even in today, the current present status of the country. I want to invite him to go and pay a visit. Please,
let him finish.
No, does the book exist? Let him answer the question.
He'll explain that to us.
You know what I'm saying is, and Miguna, you know,
I'm just showing your friend the book.
You must also appreciate the reason why you have one mouth and 2 ears, like every other human being, so you can listen more. See. This gentleman, and that's really, I think a term that I'm using very, very generously. You know, calling him a gentleman after saying those kind of things he's saying. You know, he needs to, I want to invite him to come and visit Central Kenya today, if he wants to understand who have been laborers in this country, who have been people serving probably as farmhands and cooks and people who have been subject to hard labor. Drive to Mythical Inturi's home from here, and you go and find in several places most of the people who are squatters outside the farms where they have been serving since independence as laborers is in Central Kenya. So this guy doesn't know even the history of his own country.
Does this book exist?
So and I don't know how you read your books. There's a book I can recommend you called How to Read a Book. so you can teach yourself some.
But Senator, I know you must have asked about the book.
He cannot answer the question.
I tell you, Trevor, that's what I said. I've seen the book being talked about on social media. Yeah. I have not seen that content, but I can also assure you that in present day Kenya, with the kind of leadership we have, not only in the country, but also in Kiambu, I myself being one of the leaders in Kiambu, there is no kind of content like that can be in the curriculum. For what? We are people who are enlightened. We know what we want and where we are going. And the politics and the thoughts of Miguna cannot influence us. So Miguna, you retain your narrative. That must be written by you. And by the way, there's a book you wrote. Somebody has been recommending that I read it. But I've been very wary of reading it because I may not become like you. But let me make my point because I have the platform. Because I have the platform, Trevor, on more important issues. I think that's really, not useful to discuss in this platform. See, there are quite a number of things that I may want to bring about it, and I want to start from what was said by my friend Otiende Amolo, and also carried on by Miguna, on this big question of who has and how has our democracy and constitutionalism being sabotaged. Who are the greatest saboteurs? Yeah. Of our freedoms, of our democracy, of our lawfulness. And I want to tell you, what Otiendo was saying, and also carried on by Miguna, that during the constitution making process that we wanted a centralized system where power would be captured. I would tell you, actually, the saboteurs of our lawfulness are not even those that are in leadership right now, especially from the presidency or other people holding office. It is generally politicians, and especially politicians who are responsible. I would ask you a few questions, and I'm sure they would answer. Tell me, who subverts lawfulness more than somebody who will go and say that you, as elected members of parliament, you are supposed to go to parliament for debate. Don't go to discuss. Don't go to talk in parliament. Base your arguments on irreducible minimums outside parliament. Who would you say is a saboteur of lawfulness, other than somebody who would tell an elected member of parliament or an MCA that don't go to the assembly where you're elected, or to the National Assembly, or don't even go to the office of the governor. Go under a tree and sit with people outside and start a new assembly there that is called the People's Assembly, and abandon the lawful one. Now, who is more of a saboteur of lawfulness than somebody who comes and says that, yes, the Constitution provides for a way to remove officials of IEBC from office, and comes and says, let us go and throw stones at anniversary towers and break the gates and go in and throw those people out, and then we'll remove IEBC officials. Who is more of a saboteur, other than somebody, when the Supreme Court rules and says, go back and conduct an election, and that person goes to the road the following day and says, don't go and vote, don't go to an election. Now, so when you ask yourself, who has been sabotaging our laws, who has been sabotaging our constitutionalism, you have the answer. You see, this story created about ethnic groups that you bring the data or the information from the Public Service Commission, my brother Otiende Amolo, that you will see who has more jobs. There's a very simple principle we also must apply. In truth, you see, Trevor, jobs distribution also has a direct relationship with particular populations of certain ethnic communities. It's a reality you cannot run away from. If you have got 5.6 million people from a community called the Gema community, and you have another 1.3 million called from this other community, in fact, in the law of equity itself, or in the necessity of equity itself, and in abiding to what you would call fair distribution, you would be looking at the number of those people and saying that it is not unimaginable that you would have a few more of these larger or more. I mean, that is what it's about. And indeed, that is even what democracy is all about. I want to say this as I finish. And probably 5 years from now, Otiende Amolo will answer this now in practice. The reason why most members of parliament do not come back to parliament after an election is expressly and directly as a result of what exactly he was trying to defend. That our people, our communities, do not continue to carry this mentality that when we elect our MP, we expect that we are going to get everything on us. When we go to him in the morning, he's going to hand us over this. He's going to solve all our problems. That now that he is there, he's going to give us all the monies for our children and our bursary and our hotel. When communities from that lower level, and that is the problem now we have with this, with this incessant domination of our minds, that our man must be president. And that is the question Otiende Amolo asked. We shall be satisfied when Aluo becomes president. That is the time when we say we have.
They said Luo has become president.
I mean,
those are two different.
Inferently meaning, because in the first statement, the argument that he had made was that there is no limit. Absolutely. I mean, you say this to mean this. So in my opinion,
as you wind up, because we have to bring in Mithika on this.
I want to say to Otiende Amolo and to Miguna that we have 42 communities in Kenya. And I also want to remind them of quick history.
Yeah.
Since 1992, when we became a multi-party democracy, how many other people in other communities have run for president? Forget winning. How many have run? Gilu was on the ballot. Ekuru Okot was the ballot.
When?
Okay. If you count the number of people, Raila Odinga was on the ballot. All those people have gone to and vied for the president. The question is, who won? Okay. Now, if you're talking then about a true and honest democratic process of elections, then you say out of the competition where everybody was in, it is, I mean, we are not a kingdom.
Okay, let's bring in Mithika on this. Mithika, what are your sentiments on
that? Trevor, I think there are one or two things that I want to say. And it is sad that Miguna believes or assumes that once his kinsman becomes president, then there will be inclusivity.
When did I say that?
From your statement, I am able to interpret what kind of idea you may have.
Yeah.
And as far as I am concerned, remember you said people must be in a position to explain why you have very high qualifications and you are not employed.
I did not say that.
And that's why I'm saying, allow me explain one or two things. It doesn't matter who becomes president. If our pockets have to change, if we have to fill money within ourselves, we must all endeavor to work hard, and we must all agree that without your individual effort, then there is no single president that will put money into your pocket. What we require the end of state to do is to adhere to the rule of law, is to give the assurance of stability of a country for each one of us to completely deal our work to really feed his family. I would want to demonstrate this by saying that, the issues that have been discussed in this on this table, especially this morning, in terms of how to address the issue of exclusivity. And I want to agree with Amolo that the Constitution, honestly, if we were to enforce it properly and clearly and understood what it meant when those institutions were all created, then we would not be having this idea that so and so should be at the top. Why? Because when the devolved system of government was created, in one way or another, we demystified the presidency. People really fought so hard to get to the top as president because the president had the power to allocate resources anyhowly and to anybody who was close to him. The constitutional framework today gives us money to our counties and has created the positions of governors so that any community does not feel completely excluded from that table where resources are being shared. So money has gone to the counties. We have county ends and where they wield executive power and money to develop those areas. Two, I would want to say that in his wisdom and the wisdom of Parliament to address the issue of unemployment in this country and to ensure that each one of us has some little money depending on one's effort. Parliament in 2015 passed, I think, where we passed a law where we created a certain percentage of the revenue being allocated to the less fortunate people, the disadvantaged people in society, the youth, women in this country, and the disabled people in our society, are a maximum of 30% of the revenue, so that the money is shared there. And this cuts across even to the counties, so that any money going to Meru, money going to Kisumu, the young men and women in this country, and the chief executives of those particular counties know that our young men and women must get at least 30% of the 2 billion or 5 billion that gets to this country to do, or to create business for them, so that they can really have something to feed their families. And the issue of power at the top is what, in my view, is an assumption that there is exclusivity because so and so has not gotten there. Honestly, we have to live to the realities of this country. And the reality is, who is able to mobilize the 42 tribes in this country, the regional blocks, depending on the numbers of the voters that are registered in those areas, have the possibility of becoming president. And people vote for different reasons. People in probably Nyanza will vote for their candidate, not even because of disability, or even in Kiambu, or even in Rift Valley or Kambani, may not even look at the capacity of the candidate they are voting for, but say, this is our man, let's vote for him. That is also reflected even in Dr. Amolo's village, where you have 5 locations, and those locations, once you will find that running as a member of parliament, of parliament, and being or having to be elected by 5 once in your constituency, the one that you are born, there is that possibility of getting more votes from the others. So it does not necessarily mean that there is a system which has shaped the opinion and the mind of people in a certain way, but I think it becomes, it's almost a way of life. But let us try and see how we can create an environment where the best candidate has capacity to compete with anybody else favorably, and if he's able to convince the majority of Kenyans, then he shouldn't be given the opportunity, regardless of where he comes from, regardless of who he is, because Kenyans really want him, because we must give the people that freedom of choice to decide who their leader is.
Okay, Dr. Tiende. And Wamatangi has brought up several examples where he thinks NASA is the one that is subverting the rule of law.
Senator Wamatangi says a lot of things, but they're really just hot air. Because in substance, his way of arguing, instead of facing the facts, he seeks the little things that he can get from the opposite number, because he cannot make any independent argument on any of those issues. And so I'll not respond to them specifically. What I'll tell you is this. First of all, I don't know about that book, but it disturbs me that Senator Wamatangi refused to answer that question directly. Is there such a book?
He said it's there, but he hasn't seen
the content. Because first of all, under the Constitution,
I have seen a book that is being sold there, but the content is a falsehood.
Is that the content as alleged by Miguna is not true. He did not say there is no such book. That's what disturbs me. And I say it disturbs me because there should not be any book irrespective of content. Under the Constitution, especially Schedule 4, Section 15, education policy, education standards, education curriculum is the job of the national government, not the county. So if any county has any book that it purports to have developed, irrespective of content, that is wrong. And so I hoped, and I hope moving in future, Senator Wamatangi will actually condemn that. And it disturbs me, especially if there are any such content. But my second point,
that I saw the book online.
My second point is the real problem we have is the problem of impunity. I agree with what Senator Linturi has just said. If the provisions of the Constitution and the law are observed, we would not be here. We would be in a much happier position. But we are here because of impunity. Do you know how impunity works? Impunity is having a situation where, like now, You have a person called Fazul Mohammed who forged, and I can state that again because I state it on authority, has forged documents, but is held in a position because the executive believes he advantages them by dealing with rogue NGOs. That is impunity. Impunity is having a situation, we have the constitution here, which says that the notes of this country will not bear the image of any person. That was in August 2010. 7 years later, we have notes that bear the image of the founding president. I respect the founding president, but we must respect the constitution more. So we have a situation where all notes, and I dare you, if you have any note, you will see all the notes you have. Read 16th July 2010. We are now manufacturing notes and backdating it because if it was to read any later date, then it will be expressly against the constitution. So we must create the impression that all the money we've been using for the last 7 years were printed 7 years ago. That is impunity. Impunity is having a situation as now where you appoint ambassadors to the UK, to the US, and to further these divisions that we have, you find ambassadors mobilizing particular communities against, say, the opposition leader. You know, the ambassador is supposed to represent everyone. What we have right now, if we were, and I dare you, whether you take KRA as an example, you take the security agencies, you will think that it reads like a village meeting. That is impunity. Now, that's what Senator Matangi says is imaginary. It is the reality. I deal with situations, even as ombudsman, where even in the disciplined forces, there are persons who are either retired or redeployed because they're in danger of assuming the highest position, but their tribe and name do not sound well. That is impunity. If we were to reduce impunity in this country, half our problems would be gone. My problem, irrespective of elections, is how much we have allowed impunity to creep back in, especially in the last 4 years. Okay. Now, secondly, and because we are talking about the People's Assembly, I think it is important to understand, one, that in this country we have some long-term solutions, long-term issues and short-term issues. Yeah. The short-term issue, and which is what must detain us, is how do we have a proper, legitimate government. Right now, there's a matter in the Supreme Court, or there are matters in the Supreme Court. They have not been instituted by the Raila Amolo Odinga or NASA. And the limit of what the Supreme Court can deal with are issues of legality. But we have shown that even if the Supreme Court nullified these elections as it ought, if it examined its mind to what happened, and we can come back to that, it will not deal with the questions of legitimacy. The questions of legitimacy must be dealt with in a much more fundamental way, which is why some of us are now focusing on that broader issue. We need to determine how we conduct proper, legitimate elections that can result in a legitimate government.
Okay.
Now, in the long term, we can then now come to the other issues of, do we look at the Constitution and bring in a parliamentary system? How do we deal with truth, justice, and reconciliation? We've never addressed that. How do we have true cohesion in this country? We haven't. But for now, one of the alternatives outside of the courts is the question of the People's Assembly. The People's Assembly is a legitimate constitutional endeavor that is premised on Article 1, the sovereignty of the people. It is premised on Article 10, public participation by the people, and it's also premised on Article 38, and that is the right to assemble. This is the forum that will allow elected leaders, and Senator Matangi thinks that the leaders should go to parliament. President Uhuru is on record as saying, and that's what they practice, that they do not need NASA in Senate or the National Assembly because they have the numbers. This is a forum which gives elected leaders an opportunity to express themselves more than Parliament does. It allows a situation where we can have the people participate directly, given their sovereign power. Yeah. It allows civil society to come in and discuss issues that are important. It allows religious leaders and religious bodies to also come in outside of their own national divisions. It also allows professional associations to come in. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with the People's Assembly, and especially when those People's Assembly are also based on resolutions adopted by the county assemblies. So if Senator Matangi is worried about this, he has a lot more to worry about, because it's only beginning.
All right.
By the time we have constituted the People's Assembly at every county, and then we come to the National Forum, then Senator Matangi will know the difference between legality and legitimacy. Legitimacy must be much broad-based, much broader-based than 4 commissioners colluding with the, Jubilee to deliver an election to President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Okay, just to fact check Dr. Otiende Mola, I have a fairly crisp note here. If you can just zoom in, and yes, indeed, the date is dated 16th July 2010.
All of them.
So that we can verify almost immediately, just a fact check. The book, I still see a lot of response on the book here coming through with people sending me screenshots, but I've also sent out that alert. Most likely it's going to be confirmed during this broadcast. As soon as that comes through, we'll talk about it. And Usha is also checking the response from people online, but we're going to your turn.
Yes, Trevor.
Yes.
I actually like the way you conduct the show. Let me start by saying I agree with Dr. Otiende. Leadership is not about being in parliament. Steve Biko, the legendary Steve Biko of South Africa, was not elected to parliament. Mahatma Gandhi never stepped in any public office and was never elected. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X were never elected. The greatest leaders, starting with Socrates up to now, were not elected. So this idea that being elected, whether you are manufactured through computers or not, gives you some elevated position of authority is just false. Power and legitimacy come from the people, whether you are elected or not. And in any event, the people have not said that Senator Wamatangi's opinions are superior to mine. They have never said that. I dare him to step out there, even today, in the streets of Nairobi, and let's see, by gauging the people's opinion, who holds more sway, his opinion or mine. I dare him that. He will only hold sway in Kiambu. Now, Senator Wamatangi purports to be teaching me history, and yet I was an excellent student of history and still is. I will tell you that, Senator Wamatangi. Go to all my former schools and everybody will tell you I was always the best student in history. So I'm proud to say that.
That must be the former.
No. And I studied at Giri's High
current
School,
one.
which is in Central Province. So you can't teach me about Central Province either. And I'm a nationalist and a Pan-Africanist. So this idea that these gentlemen who never were seen before they recently emerged in Parliament can teach us about the repeal of Section 2A in 1992, when I went to detention fighting for the repeal, is just abhorrent to any consciousness of human beings. Two, now, it is ridiculous for Senator Linturi to imply that people from Central Province, for example, I'm just giving as an example, are harder workers more than people from Nyanza, for example, or people from Western, for example. And that he says we just have to encourage people to work hard, as if all these other areas do not work hard. I'll give him examples. The Lamu Highway, if you go to Lamu today and you look at what they call the Lamu Highway, is a garden path compared to Nyeri Highway or Thika Superhighway. What is the difference? Why don't the Lamu people have an highway and the people in Central Province do? What is the difference? Are they lazy? Don't they pay tax? Or what is the problem? How come Gatundu District Hospital is better equipped, better constructed, better maintained than Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Hospital, which is at a higher grade, level 5? How come it is not the same as Malava District Hospital, which is like a dispensary. These are issues that must be addressed. The issues of power and how power is shared, the issues of resources and how these are shared among Kenya's 42 plus communities are real issues we cannot run away from. State power and public office has been captured or have been captured by 2 communities in Kenya right now. We must admit that. And this issue of fraudulently managing or manipulating elections is so that the capture continues. This is what we are fighting against. And this you are not going to take away from the issue of discussion in Kenya until we get it right. Okay. And if we can't get it right, because people like Senator Wamatangi believe that they were born to dominate others, then yes, we will get to the issue of secession and we will discuss it. Does Kenya belong to all of us, or Kenya only belongs to Senator Wamatangi and his group? If we have come to the conclusion that because they wield big guns, because they have infiltrated all the state organs, starting with the military going down, and they have hoarded power, and they don't want to share power, and they collect taxes from other communities and do not want, because they hold power, to dispense development, quote unquote, by allocating resources so that these other areas can also develop, then we will revisit the question of secession. Okay. Now, when you come to the distribution of resources to the counties, Senator Lunturi said that now we have counties. He forgets conveniently, and as a senator, this is quite shameful, because he's supposed to protect devolution, that it's a minimum of 15% and a maximum of 45% of the audited, the latest audited revenue that is supposed to go. That is what has been going to the counties, not the entire budget of government. That is a minuscule. That cannot bring the kind of development that we're talking about. So essentially about 80% plus has been left to the national government, which has been using it for self-aggrandizement, selective bribery, and this perpetuation of impunity that Dr. Otiende has spoken about. So let us be very clear. Since independence, there has been a deliberate, systematic, and organized economic sabotage of areas outside Central and Rift Valley provinces. Okay. Nyanza specifically has been sabotaged economically, directly. Now they have gone beyond economic sabotage. Now it has been sabotaged on education, it has been sabotaged on many, many other sectors. And what we are saying, enough is enough. Okay. We are not going to take it anymore.
Mithika.
Yeah, let me answer Miguna, because I would only advise Muguna to be less bitter. You know, Muguna talks with a lot of bitterness, as if somebody has taken anything from him, without realizing that these things can only be achieved through negotiation and the right approach. The way I'm saying this is because Muguna conveniently, as he's saying, tries to express some bit of ignorance. And the ignorance that he's expressing here is that he wants us to revisit the issue of equipping and funding of hospitals, when he knows very well for the last 5 years, health issues are devolved to the counties. And for that matter, then that matter is best dealt with at the counties. The national government has been trying through the medical equipment support program to equip these other hospitals through their funds. Two, Miguna is not telling the country, yes, the Constitution talks about a minimum of 15%. Miguna has not realized, has not done some bit of research to understand how much money has been taken to the counties from the undetermined revenues in the last 6 years. And to be specific, the amount that has been set, despite, has gone to the counties, despite that provision of 50% has exceeded 40% in these counties. So even if the constitution is saying so 15%, the Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto administration has tried its best to progressively increase these allocations to the counties, because it is at the counties where most of these, where most of the work that really touches on the well-being of the Mwananchi is being done, and this we support. So it is important as we deal with this matter to understand the actual figures, the statistics that they obtain at the moment, so that really we do not mislead the country.
Okay, Momatangi, let's make shorter points like that so that we move this along.
We make sure what?
Shorter points.
Well, I thought you allowed Miguna to make the longest points possible, and you are very
now
quiet.
you're already eating into your time.
Please don't curtail us. But actually, what I wanted to say, Trevor, because you are my friend, the swiftness with which you are verifying some facts, apply it across the board, because I saw you are very swift to verify
the notes, because I had one in my pocket.
I've sent. Let me first finish.
Let me finish. I also have to explain that, because now you're turning this on me.
Explaining before I finish.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me finish and then you explain.
And remember, it's your county, so you should be giving us the facts
that
more.
That is okay.
Yes.
I'm saying, as you swiftly then verify that note, because you had one.
Yes.
When Miguna makes certain allegations that we have infiltrated the military, please also fact check. Whether he's making those allegations out of fact. But what I would want to say more so is this. I think we have had this debate before, that it is important that we confine ourselves to facts, when we are making contributions here. I get disturbed when you let Miguna run so wild. He's Linturi called him a liar. I wanted to add on that, to extend that definition, because
Senator, that's why it's 2 versus 2. It's your job to counter what he says.
But some of the things that he is saying here are completely out of place.
Doctor, let him finish. Let him finish. Just let him finish. You respond.
He doesn't have to accept. No, I said very, very simply.
Yeah.
That indeed I wanted to add on what Linturi had said.
But you
before.
can't call me a liar.
That indeed that you are lying.
What is
that you are a liar?
What is a liar?
Because most of the things you are saying here are completely not only factual, but most of them are horrid. They are completely not based on anything.
The military.
You see, and this is what I'm saying, Trevor, that it is important that we preserve the decency of debate by confining ourselves to fact. Because if you allow somebody to just come here and say anything that he likes, then we have a lot we can say. But I want to finalize on his point. And it is good Linturi has pointed out to some of the facts he has, or other issues he has brought up based on a lot of ignorance. For example, on what he's talking about the health units not knowing, or rather forgetting that they're devolved. But even more, he talks about Vika Super Highway, Lamu Highway is like a street path, forgetting that similar construction is ongoing even in Kisumu town, forgetting that SGR itself, a project worth billions, has been started from Mombasa, passing up to Nairobi, going to his own county, the way to Kisumu, and even to Malaba, and not going to Central Kenya. And so, when he makes those kind of arguments, that's what I'm saying, we have to be factual. And most of what he does actually is diversionary, Trevor, from the issues, because there are issues that we wanted to deal with, and I wanted to deal with the issue of what Tiende Amolo had spoken about, the people's assemblies. I think that was a critical issue, and it's a main issue, because, you see, and I wanted to start by the reference to Article 1, that power belongs to the people, and then onwards to Article 2, that the people can express or exercise their power, and the word is either directly themselves or through their elected representatives, and underline the word either. Now, you see what they do. Once you have your own elected representatives, ignoring the either, they abuse
the Constitution and use those elected representatives to be the ones to subvert the provisions of the same Constitution. And this is why we have a problem. Because, you see, they know very well in NASA that you cannot go to Homa Bay town and start this process on your own standing. There you have to use and subvert the Constitution and use those elected officials. And this is what the question they have not answered persistently. If you have subjected yourself to that provision of the Constitution to be the carrier of that mandate via an election to represent the people, then what are you telling the country as far as your truthfulness to the Constitution is concerned and your fidelity to it, if you insist and you start a path whereby you're telling those same representatives who are elected, go and call another assembly that is illegal. And the purpose of this is to also subvert another process which is expressly provided for in the Constitution, and that is what they said, to have a legitimately constituted government. And I want to ask this question as because this is where Otiende Amolo was basing his whole argument on this, that how do you determine, how do you get to determining that you have a proper elected legitimate government? And you know, that the answer to that question is as simple as opening and reading the Constitution and the procedures that are provided for, and ask, has these procedures been followed? Now remember, even as we sit, the elections of 2013 were determined by the Supreme Court when they went to court, and they accepted. The government has been there. That is a provision of the law. We came to 2017. They went to court. The court overturned the outcome of the election. We accepted also in turn, and we went to another election again. Okay. Now, after we have gone to this second election, the problem that NASA has right now is because they are unable to sit well and settled with the outcome of the election that they knew they would lose. Okay. And to continue the charade so that they can legitimately continue to occupy. I mean, sorry, not legitimate, but illegitimately continue to occupy political space. That is why they have to invent these new methods that they are calling a people's assembly, while they know that the government that we have is legitimate. All right. Lastly, on this question of the currencies, this, in fact, that is one of the reasons I would say that we require to have a constitutional amendment. I wish those who had opposed the Constitution had their say. I mean, look at the United States itself. Right now, if you take a dollar bill, a $1 bill, it still has the head and the image of its founding father. So you think the notion should remain as is? This country should have been able to honor its leaders and say fine, and as had been proposed. Remember, I was one of those also who made proposals. Okay. Any subsequent presidents, and Kibaki was very clear on it, should forfeit any attempt to have their images on our new currency. Right, but what is wrong with the country admitting that this was our start, this was our goal, and then we got this person to lead us? As Senator, the question is, it's already in the Constitution, so you're saying it should be reverted back and be maintained as it is? If we went to, that is one of the things I would be saying. Wouldn't that be ignoring the Constitution? Just as we have the Oginga Odinga Mausoleum in Bondo, just like we have the Kenyatta Mausoleum, just like we have Uhuru Park, just like we have other monuments that there is nothing constitutionally wrong with the country saying that we can have. But the Constitution now says it shouldn't have. I understand that. Yes. That's what I'm saying. So you say ignore that part and change it back. I would be saying that it is not wrong for us to continue to honor somebody who led us to fight for our freedom and find it. And as long as anybody else behind them can also understand that they cannot all be there. All right, I mean, what is criminal about? I have to take the feedback from the people who the sovereign power belongs to, and Usha is here to read from them. Usha, what are they saying?
Right, Trevor got a lot of diverse reactions, so I'll just get straight to it. We have Amelia who says, sadly, things are only offenses when committed by others. Consciences unfortunately died a long time ago. I'm honestly a tired Kenyan. We have Martin who says, what these opposition guys should take to the bank is that we cannot divide a country into two just because a loser lost again. Even if it succeeds, it can take 10 years and the person you are fighting for to be president won't be legible because of age. We have Malik who says, we cannot cannot let harmful circumstances be the natural order of things. Implement the TJRC. We have Peter who says, at the end, it shall be painful to bear that the people we protected with our lives are the people who deceived us to oblivion. Crowd mentality is the grand poison chalice of this generation. Please think for yourself. We also have Alfred who says, each community has potential leaders. Let's have a system that gives each of them a chance to rule. We have Weru who says, everyone comes from a certain tribe, but we are all Kenyans. We also have Malik who says, Kenya is threatened more by failure of national institutions, impunity and ethnicity, all of which is glorified by this regime. We have Timothy who says, words are powerful. If our leaders continue to preach the gospel of tribal division, then we'll only expect a more divided Kenya. We have Omondi who says, political calculations must put into consideration their impact on the next generation. I foresee a future generation that shall be so disturbed by the actions of their forefathers for permanently putting them in alienation with their fellow compatriots. We also have Joe who says, secession is not good, but what can counter the entrenched sense of indifference to rights of some regions? We have Luis who says, the only reason they fear secession is because when the two groups are left alone, they won't last long together. We also have Little who says, a person does not benefit simply because a person of your tribe is in power, but politicians will never tell you that because they want you to vote for them. We have Mitch who says there are two mentalities that divide Kenya each electioneering period. Number one, the winner takes all, and number two, it's our time to eat. Such that when one gets power, the others who lost feel they will be frustrated and excluded for 5 years. This should change. And finally, we have Kavins who says ours was never a country. The desire to unite Kenya has faced numerous obstacles from Democrats since independence. So that is your feedback, of course, and a lot more. And as you can see, Trevor, the tweets today are really wordy. I think people had a lot to say about this. Every tweet was actually very long. There are diverse opinions, but I think the one thing that everybody agrees on is that they're tired of what's happening currently. They want us to move forward, regardless of whether they agree with the secession, regardless of whether they want us to accept and move on. Everybody is tired of the current situation.
Thanks, Usha, for that feedback. I appreciate it. I know you decided to avoid the book controversy, which is okay with me. But let's bring in Dr. Tiende on final remarks, 30 seconds each.
I think Senator Omatangi helpfully admits to his mindset of accepting impunity. In saying that Article 231 says you should not bear the image of anyone, and he thinks that it is okay to have notes that bear the image of someone because eventually it should change the constitution, although this was adopted by the majority of Kenyans, is the mindset of the Jubilee administration. It is a mindset of impunity, and that is a problem. The first way to deal with any problem is to accept there's a problem. If you deny it, then you can't deal with it. You must first accept that there's an unfair distribution of governmental employment opportunity. You must accept that there's an unfair direction of professional opportunities in this country. And you must accept that there's an inequitable direction of state resources. Okay. As long as you deny that, you can't go anywhere. Which brings me to the last. Article 1 is very clear, despite the misreading by Senator Matangi. Article 1 allows the people to exercise their sovereign power directly. It uses the word may. And it also says that all other power is delegated. As the persons who delegate, you can recall that power. And when you do, as now we are directing the people to, then you will find that all the power that the Jubilee administration believes it has, all the power it believes lies in Parliament, which is no more than a Jubilee parliamentary group, will be relevant.
All right. Dr. Miguna, 30 seconds. The music is already playing.
We will not move on. We are not going to move on.